The moon rises above deserts of sand and snow, above oceans that breathe with tides, above temples long reduced to ruins. The moon has always been there, silver, silent, watching, and humanity, unable to accept silence, filled it with stories. Why is it that every civilization, from the frozen north to the jungles of Mesoamerica, imagined gods in the moon's face? Why, across thousands of years, did we look up at the same pale disk and see not a lifeless stone, but a divine presence? Perhaps because the moon was never passive. It pulled waters, commanded harvests, whispered in lovers' hearts, and unsettled the dreams of the mad. It was not simply light and darkness, it was a mirror. It reflected not only the sun, but us, our fears, our desires, our need to believe there is order even in the night. In Greece, poets saw Selene, a goddess crowned in silver, driving her chariot across the sky. To the Egyptians, it was Khonsu, the traveler, protector of time and health. And in Japan, the moon became Tsukuyomi, a cold, stern god whose decisions shaped the heavens themselves. In India, it was Chandra, a shining jewel, source of life and rhythm, whose phases mirrored the eternal cycle of creation and decay. And in the lands of the Aztec, the moon was Tecciztecatl, not a figure of triumph, but of hesitation, weakness, and compromise. 5 civilizations, 5 gods, 5 ways of seeing the same light. But the question remains, what is the moon to us? We cannot escape its pull. Lovers still promise eternal devotion beneath its glow. Farmers still trace its cycles for planting. Sailors once steered by its silver path. Even now in our age of science and satellites, the moon holds us. We walk on it, yet it walks through our myths still. Listen closely, and you will hear its voices layered one atop another. Selene whispering of beauty, Khonsu guarding with steady steps, Tsukuyomi judging from afar, Chandra pulsing with vitality, Tecciztecatl reminding us of human frailty. Together they form a chorus, a hymn carried across oceans and centuries. This is not simply the story of the moon. It is the story of us, of how we shape the unknown into gods, how we weave our longing for meaning into the stars above. So tonight we begin a journey, across empires, across faiths, across time itself. We will walk in the light and shadows of these moon gods, tracing the silver lines of myth that stretch from the earliest fireside tales to the screens and pages of today. And perhaps when the journey ends, we will stand again beneath the night sky, look up, and see not just a moon, but the divine imagination of humanity shining back at us. Because the moon does not change, we do. And in its phases, waxing, waning, reborn, we recognize our own eternal cycles. So let us ask once more, when you gaze at the moon tonight, do you see a dead rock in orbit? Or do you still hear the footsteps of gods? The moon was never just decoration in the night sky. It was a clock, a compass, a torch for travelers, a silent witness for lovers and warriors alike. Long before men raised cathedrals or inked scriptures, they built calendars out of its silver rhythm. In the fertile valleys where agriculture was born, farmers read its swelling crescents to know when to sow, and its darkened face to know when to rest. Polynesian sailors traced entire oceans by its rise and fall. Even now, whole cultures celebrate their new year, their fasts, their feasts, not by the solar count of days, but by the breath of the moon. Yet the moon was never merely useful. Its glow was too mysterious, too unstable to remain only a tool. It was both constant and changing, always there yet never the same, waxing toward fullness, waning toward disappearance, reborn again from shadow. It embodied the paradox of permanence and impermanence, a truth so powerful it had to be clothed in myth. Where the sun was a blunt blaze of certainty, the moon was elusive. It shifted, it hid, it softened. It granted light, but never enough to banish fear. It offered guidance, but left room for imagination. And in that dim space, humanity planted gods. We painted faces on its surface, carved stories into its phases, and listened for voices in its silence. Across cultures, the moon gathered archetypes. In one land, she was the nurturing mother, swelling with fertility, waning into age, carrying in her own body the cycles of womb and tomb, of milk and morning. In another, the moon became the hunter, prowling the forests of night, companion to beasts and guardian of prey and predator alike. And elsewhere it was the judge, cold and impartial, the eye that could not be bribed, the witness to deeds done in darkness. Three roles repeating like refrains across time: mother, hunter, judge. But the moon's role was not only to symbolize, it was to mirror. People looked up and saw their own lives reflected in its shifting face. In the waxing crescent, they felt hope, beginnings, the urgency of love blooming or journeys undertaken. In the waning half, they sensed loss, endings, the inevitability of letting go. The full moon's triumph, glowing at the height of its power, lasted only one night before it began to fade. No king, no empire, no life was exempt. In the heavens, night after night, the moon was delivering the most universal sermon humanity ever heard. Nothing endures, yet nothing is ever truly lost. This was more than metaphor. It was law. The moon's cycles dictated planting and harvest. Babies born under certain phases were said to carry destiny in their breath. Armies marched or stayed still according to omens traced in its silver path. The moon was salvation when obeyed, ruin when ignored. Humanity did not just watch the moon, it submitted to it. And yet the moon was not always gentle. Its light had an edge. Many cultures feared its power over the mind. Even the English word for madness, lunacy, comes from luna. In Europe, they believed the full moon could unhinge reason. Wolves howled, witches gathered, lovers lost themselves. The same glow that inspired poets was thought to open the doors of insanity. For every vision of tenderness, there was a shadow of dread. Still, the fascination never waned. The moon was the eternal paradox, savior and tyrant, guide and deceiver, healer and destroyer. It stirred seas without touching them, drew blood without a blade. In its pale glow, people saw not only gods, but themselves, fragile, changeable, searching for meaning in the dark. Everywhere the moon rose, it carried names. In Greece, Selene, her silver chariot drawn across the heavens. In Egypt, Khonsu, the restless traveler, healer of the sick and protector of time. In Japan, Tsukuyomi, cold and unyielding, whose decision to shed blood tore night from day. In India, Chandra, the shining jewel of the gods, waxing and waning with cosmic breath. In the Aztec world, Tecciztecatl, hesitant, imperfect, shamed into becoming the reluctant moon. Different cultures, different faces, different lessons, and yet all pointing back to the same luminous disk. When the Greeks prayed to Selene for love, when Egyptians begged Khonsu for protection, when Aztecs told their children of Tecciztecatl's cowardice, they were all speaking to the same light in the sky. The gods they imagined were not contradictions, but facets, fragments of the same mystery. The moon has always been the bridge between human frailty and divine imagination. It is no wonder that civilizations clothed it in stories. We could not look at it without wanting to hear a voice. We could not live under it without needing to believe it was more than stone. And so, over millennia, the moon became not one god, but many, a mirror refracting the deepest questions of humanity. The Greeks were never strangers to the night. They built their myths as much under the stars as beneath the sun, and in the silver glow they found Selene, daughter of the Titans Hyperion and Theia, sister to Helios the sun and Eos the dawn. Selene was not simply a goddess of the moon, she was the moon itself. When they looked up at the orb in the sky, they were not imagining a symbol or a mask. They believed they were seeing her face, radiant and unblinking, driving her chariot across the heavens. Selene's image was painted with tenderness and inevitability. Her horses were pale, sometimes winged, their hooves striking sparks of light across the firmament. Each night she rose, unfurling a cloak of silver over the world, guiding the hours until her brother's dawn broke the spell. In that rhythm, the Greeks found reassurance. The sun may blind, but the moon caressed. The sun may rule, but the moon comforted. Her story is inseparable from one of the most haunting myths in Greek imagination, her love for Endymion. Endymion was a mortal shepherd, or in some tellings a king. He was young, beautiful, and eternally asleep. The versions vary. Some say Zeus granted him everlasting slumber as a gift. Others say Endymion chose it himself to preserve his youth forever. But all agree on this. Selene descended from her chariot night after night to gaze upon him. She kissed his closed eyes, lay beside his still body, and bore him 50 daughters, children of the moonlit union. This myth shimmered with both beauty and unease. To the Greeks it embodied longing, love eternal but frozen, desire fulfilled, but only in dreams. In Endymion's sleep, humanity glimpsed the cost of immortality, beauty preserved at the expense of life, desire consummated at the expense of awakening. Selene's story whispered that the moon's beauty was always tinged with sadness, her light with loneliness. But Selene was not only the goddess of love, she was also the keeper of time. Her cycles marked the Greek calendar. Farmers planted and harvested by her phases. Priests counted her months for sacred rituals. She measured life in crescents and circles. To the Greeks, Selene's face was both romance and law, passion and structure. What made her unique, however, was the intimacy she embodied. Where Helios, her brother, was distant and overwhelming, Selene was close. She rode not in daylight's blaze, but in night's quiet. Her light was softer, more personal. To stand under the moon was to stand under her gaze, not blinded, but illuminated. And in this gentle glow, mortals felt seen. Selene's symbolism extended beyond fertility and time. Philosophers reflected on her duality, waxing and waning as metaphors for change, impermanence, the natural law of decline and renewal. Artists painted her as luminous and veiled, ever beautiful, yet never the same. In her, the Greeks saw an answer to the question, how can something be eternal and yet always different? The moon's cycle was the paradox of existence made visible. Over time, Selene's role blurred with other lunar figures. Artemis, the huntress, took on aspects of the moon, her bow echoing the crescent. Hecate, goddess of witchcraft, claimed its darker face. Yet Selene remained distinct, not huntress, not sorceress, but embodiment itself. If Artemis was the moon as wilderness, and Hecate the moon as mystery, then Selene was the moon as presence, pure, unqualified, undeniable. Her echoes did not fade when Greece gave way to Rome. The Romans named her Luna, worshipped her in temples, and kept her cycles as markers of civic life. Even the English word lunatic, centuries later, would carry her shadow. In literature, from Shakespeare's invocations of the pale Queen of Night to Shelley's romantic hymns, Selene's lineage persists. In science, the very word selenology, the study of the moon, still carries her name. To compare her with another moon deity is to see her uniqueness. Khonsu of Egypt was the moon as healer and protector, a male figure whose role was order. Tsukuyomi of Japan was the moon as judge, austere and cold. Chandra of India was the moon as rhythm of life, deeply woven into daily ritual. Tecciztecatl of the Aztec was the moon as flaw, a god defined by hesitation. But Selene, she was none of these. She was beauty and inevitability, the timeless image of longing. If others symbolized functions, Selene symbolized feeling. Her myth was not about power or law, but about love and time. And in that, she has never really left us. The image of a pale goddess watching over sleeping lovers remains etched in our imagination. We speak of moonlight as romance, of midnight trysts beneath her glow. She appears in novels, in paintings, in films that cast her as both comfort and haunting. Even astronauts who walked on her surface could not escape her allure. They brought back rocks, but they also brought back silence, a silence that felt like her presence. Selene remains the goddess whose face we still search for when we stand in the dark and lift our eyes. She is as close as our own breath, as distant as eternity, and perhaps that is her greatest power. She reminds us that beauty is not meant to be possessed. It is meant to be witnessed, fleeting, radiant, untouchable. Selene's presence was not confined to myth alone. Her influence bled into ritual life, into philosophy, into the way Greeks structured their very sense of being. The months of the Attic calendar were counted by her cycles, festivals rising and falling with her phases. Offerings of milk, honey, and white animals were left in her honor. To sacrifice beneath the full moon was to align with her fullness, to hope for abundance. To pray under the new moon was to begin again. She was not only the goddess of longing, but of beginnings. Farmers looked to her as the first sign of fertility in the soil. Mothers invoked her in childbirth, asking that her gentle glow guard the transition from darkness into life. She was tied to women's cycles, her waxing and waning echoing their bodies, her hidden nights mirroring mystery and renewal. For the Greeks, Selene was not an abstraction. She was intimate, woven into flesh and earth. And yet she remained untouchable. Unlike Demeter, who bent close to farmers' fields, or Athena, who strode with warriors, Selene existed at a distance. She was the light above, not the hand beside. She did not interfere in politics or battles. She did not scheme like Hera or rage like Poseidon. Her myth was quieter, but no less powerful. The Greeks did not fear her wrath. They feared her absence. Without Selene, nights were blind, cycles broken, time unmoored. She was not power through punishment, but power through presence. The love story with Endymion deepened this sense of distance. Night after night she came to him, yet he never woke. It is the most tender image of all Greek mythology, and the most unsettling. What is love without reciprocity? What is beauty if it cannot rouse the beloved? Selene's devotion became a lesson in the loneliness of desire. She reminds us that to love is often to love across distance, across silence. She whispers that longing itself is divine, even if it never finds an answer. This is why Selene is remembered less for temples than for poetry. She is less a figure of marble and law than a muse of imagination. She is present in Hesiod's hymns, in Homer's epics, in countless lines where the moon becomes the silent witness to passion or sorrow. The Greeks did not build her a Parthenon, they built her a place in their dreams. That is a kind of immortality temples cannot rival. Her myth lingers in the very language of love. We still speak of moonlight as romance, of lovers moonstruck, of nights where passion glows as brightly as her silver face. The moon is the backdrop of confessions, of first kisses, of solitude after parting. All these traces are Selene's. She is not only remembered, she is still lived. Every time a lover stands beneath her glow and feels seen, Selene rises again. When we compare her to Khonsu, the Egyptian moon god, the contrast is sharp. Khonsu was functional. He healed, he measured time, he guarded travelers. His myths are of power and protection. Selene's myths are of beauty and yearning. Where Khonsu demanded reverence as order, Selene asked for none. She simply appeared, and that was enough. The Egyptians approached their moon as supplicants. The Greeks approached theirs as dreamers. Both were true, both were needed. And yet Selene's figure never vanished even when others eclipsed her. Artemis grew to embody the moon's wildness, Hecate its witchcraft. But Selene remained a whisper, an undercurrent. The Romans revived her as Luna, keeper of cycles. Renaissance painters draped her in flowing robes, eyes downcast with eternal tenderness. Romantic poets called upon her glow to frame their verses. Even in science she lingers. The element selenium, the field of selenology, Her name lives on in the cold language of chemistry and astronomy. She is both goddess and ghost, woven into our speech without our knowing. And today, she is everywhere. In films, she appears as the pale queen of night, eternal, haunting. In video games and novels, her name is borrowed to grant power or beauty. Even Marvel's Moon Knight invokes her Roman self, Luna, in a world of heroes and shadows. But these are not distortions, they are echoes. Humanity cannot help but return to Selene when it speaks of the moon. She was the first true face we gave it, and she remains the most enduring. What makes her timeless is the lesson she carries. Selene does not conquer, she does not command. She reminds us instead that beauty lies in the cycle, in the rise and fall, in the inevitability of change. She teaches that longing is not weakness, that even unfulfilled desire can be holy. She is a goddess who does not win, but endures. And endurance across centuries is the deepest kind of power. Perhaps that is why, even now, when we stand beneath a full moon, we still speak to her. We still whisper our hopes, our grief, our private words. We do not pray to the sun in that way. The sun is too fierce, too public. But the moon, Selene's face, listens. She always has. And so, in the Greek imagination, Selene became more than a goddess. She became a reflection of ourselves, eternal yet changing, present yet untouchable, full of love, yet marked by loneliness. She was the goddess who carried in her silver glow the truth we all must learn, that nothing lasts, yet everything returns. Selene rides still, across centuries, across cultures, across every midnight sky. Her chariot blazes not only in myth, but in memory. When we look up and see her light, we are not only watching a rock reflect the sun, we are watching the face of a goddess who has outlasted empires, who has survived in whispers, who still gazes down upon us as she once gazed upon Endymion. And perhaps in our own sleep, we too are touched by her. The Nile was a river of rhythms. Its floods rose and fell. Its banks breathed life into deserts. And in the dark skies above, another rhythm watched over it all, the rhythm of the moon. To the Egyptians, this was not simply a light in the night. It was a god, a traveler, a healer, a measure of the very order of existence. His name was Khonsu. Khonsu's story is bound to Thebes, to the great temples where gods were not only worshipped, but woven into the machinery of the state. He was called the Traveler, for he moved across the heavens each night, mapping the hours, keeping time. He was also called the Healer, for his light was thought to cure the sick, to drive away evil spirits, to protect those who journeyed by night. His form was often that of a youthful figure, his head crowned with a crescent in full moon, his hair bound tight, sometimes with the head of a falcon. If Selene was beauty, Khonsu was vigilance. In myth, Khonsu was not the most ancient of gods. He rose in prominence as Thebes rose, part of a triad with a moon and Mut. Yet his power was undeniable. To pray to Khonsu was to pray for safe passage, for fertility, for health. His priests invoked him to banish demons. In one story, a prince of Bekten falls gravely ill, possessed by a spirit. The pharaoh calls upon Khonsu, who travels far, confronts the demon, and heals the boy. The tale was inscribed on temple walls. Khonsu, the moonlight, driving back the darkness. His role as guardian of time made him essential. Egyptians relied on the moon to track their months, to set their rituals. Khonsu's nightly journey was not only mythic but practical. He was the divine clock, the silent regulator. In him, the Egyptians saw order against chaos, the eternal balance their world depended upon. While the Nile gave them life, Khonsu measured it, ensuring that life followed rhythm, not disorder. And yet Khonsu was not only a god of calm. Some texts hint at his darker edge. In certain myths, he is said to devour other gods, to consume their power, to grow stronger by feeding on their light. This hunger was tamed, controlled by offerings and rituals, but it revealed another truth. The moon was not only protector, it was predator. Its phases, waxing to fullness, hinted at a god who consumed until he could shine no brighter, then waned as if emptied. In Khonsu, the Egyptians saw both healer and devourer, savior and threat. Still, it was his role as guardian that endured. In temple carvings, he is shown holding a crook and flail, symbols of kingship, as if the pharaohs themselves ruled only under his timekeeping. Travelers carved his image on amulets to ensure safe journeys through desert and darkness. Mothers prayed to him when their children were sick. His temples echoed with hymns that praised him as the one who makes women fertile, who makes men strong, who heals all sickness. To stand in Thebes on a moonlit night must have felt like standing under his protection. The great pylons of Karnak casting shadows, the silver Nile glimmering, and above it all the white disk of Khonsu, watching, measuring, guiding. His light did not blaze like Ra's sun. It did not intoxicate like Hathor's love. It reassured, it whispered. The night is not chaos. The night has order, and I keep it for you. When we place Khonsu beside Selene, the contrast is sharp. Selene's myth was one of longing and beauty, a goddess defined by romance and melancholy. Khonsu's was one of law and protection. He was less about feeling and more about function, less muse than guardian. If Selene comforted lovers, Khonsu watched over travelers and healed the sick. Both carried the moon, but their lessons diverged. Selene reminded humanity of desire's bittersweetness. Khonsu reminded humanity that even in darkness, order remains, and Khonsu has not vanished with the fall of Egypt's temples. His name echoes faintly in modern imagination. In comic books, he has returned as the patron of heroes, most famously in Marvel's Moon Knight, where he is both protector and manipulator, ally and oppressor, a modern reflection of his dual nature. In Egypt itself, his images still adorn ruins visited by millions, silent but enduring, carved in stone as the moon still glows above them. Khonsu endures because his essence is timeless. We still measure our lives by the moon's rhythm, still look to its glow for comfort on dark journeys, still feel its pull in our bodies and our tides. We may no longer call upon Khonsu's name, but we live under his law. He was and remains the night's quiet reassurance that time still flows, that the dark is never formless, that the silver traveler still keeps watch. Khonsu's worship tells us much about how the Egyptians saw the world. For them, divinity was not abstract but practical, woven into the very mechanics of daily life. Ra ruled the sun, Osiris the underworld, Isis the throne of queenship. Khonsu was their measure of time, their guardian in the darkness. He filled a role as essential as breath itself. If the sun was the heartbeat of day, the moon was the pulse of night, and Khonsu kept it steady. This sense of order was vital in Egypt, where the struggle between Ma'at and Isfet, order and chaos, defined the cosmos. Every god was judged by how they maintained balance. Khonsu's nightly travel across the sky was more than spectacle. It was duty. By keeping the lunar rhythm, he kept chaos at bay. Imagine standing on the banks of the Nile during a new moon. The river black, the stars endless, predators stirring, and then slowly the silver arc of Khonsu's crescent rises. Darkness becomes navigable, fear becomes endurable. That was his gift. But Khonsu was not gentle in every telling. In early texts, he is portrayed as a fierce and even violent god, one who could strike down enemies and drink their blood. He is a moon of hunger, his light a consuming fire. Only later did he soften into the healer, the guardian of travelers. The Egyptians did not see contradiction here. They saw completeness. The moon could be both predator and protector, just as night could be both danger and rest. Khonsu contained both. In this dual nature, we glimpse a deeper truth about the moon itself. It heals because it frightens. It protects because it consumes. Its light feels safe precisely because it glows against a void. Without darkness, Khonsu has no meaning. His power comes from tension, not simplicity. Ritual life reflected this. Temples to Khonsu in Thebes were places not just of worship, but of healing. Inscriptions tell of priests invoking him to cure the sick, offering his statues to those in need, believing that to hold his image was to hold his light. Incantations called him the one who makes the womb fertile, who restores sight to the blind, who drives out demons. At the same time, hymns warned of his anger, his power to devour gods themselves. Worshippers lived between awe and fear, reverence and caution. His presence stretched beyond Egypt. As Egyptian culture spread, Khonsu's name traveled into Syria, into Mesopotamia, where he was recognized as a moon god with great power. Travelers carried him on amulets. Traders invoked him for safety. The silver light above was universal, and Khonsu's identity rode its beams. In art, he remained a youth, eternally fresh, his side lock of hair marking him as the forever child. This was not a weakness, but a symbol of renewal. Like the moon, Khonsu never aged. He waned, but he returned. He vanished, but he came again. His perpetual youth was the visual counterpart to the cycle itself. He embodied the promise that night is not an end, but a passage. If Selene taught the Greeks about longing, Khonsu taught the Egyptians about continuity. Life was fragile, but the moon endured. Empires rose and fell, but Khonsu's journey across the night sky was eternal. To live under his light was to live under reassurance that order outlasts chaos. Today, when we compare him to other moon deities, his uniqueness shines. Tsukuyomi of Japan is the judge, distant and cold. Chandra of India is rhythm, woven into ritual and emotion. Tecciztecatl of the Aztecs is failure turned into compromise. Selene is beauty and desire. Khonsu stands apart as the healer, the traveler, the guardian. He is the moon not as muse, not as weakness, not as judge, but as companion, a god who walks with us through the night, marking the hours, promising dawn. Yet even now his shadow lingers in unexpected places. In modern imagination, he reappears as a character both protective and manipulative, as in Moon Knight. There his duality, guardian and predator, is dramatized for a new age. Audiences may not know his temples or hymns, but they sense his nature, the moon as both savior and tyrant. Khonsu's mythology fits our era because it always contained contradiction, and contradiction is timeless. Stand on the banks of the Nile today, when the moon is full, and the ruins of Karnak glow in silver. The desert stretches black and infinite. Tourists whisper, locals move quietly. Above it all, the same disk rises, the same journey continues. You do not need priests or incantations to feel it. The moon still reassures, still measures, still protects. Khonsu's temples may crumble, but his presence has never been dismantled. If Selene's story was about love that could not awaken, Khonsu's is about order that cannot fail. He is the guardian who ensures that even in our darkest night, time flows, tides rise, cycles turn. He does not promise ease, but he promises rhythm, and in that rhythm lies survival. Khonsu remains the silver traveler, his youth eternal, his journey endless, his light a balance between gentleness and hunger. To the Egyptians, he was proof that the night was not chaos. To us, he is a reminder that even when all seems uncertain, some patterns endure. The moon still walks. The traveler still moves. Khonsu still watches. The Japanese imagined the birth of the world as an act of purification. Izanagi, the father of creation, washed himself after returning from the land of death, and from his cleansing the gods were born. From his left eye came Amaterasu, the radiant sun. From his nose came Susanoo, the storm, and from his right eye, dark and cold, came Tsukuyomi, the moon. His arrival was not celebrated with warmth. Amaterasu's brilliance commanded reverence. Susanoo's tempest demanded fear. But Tsukuyomi's light was different, pale, austere, without comfort. He was not warmth, not chaos, not compassion. He was clarity. Where Amaterasu dazzled with gold, Tsukuyomi cut with silver. His was the light of judgment. The tale that defines him is brief but devastating. The goddess of food, Ukamochi, prepared a banquet for the gods. She produced food from her own body, rice from her mouth, fish from her nose, meat from her excrement. It was a sacred offering, raw, primordial, the way the earth itself gave sustenance. But Tsukuyomi was repulsed. He called it foul, unworthy of divinity, and in anger, he killed her. When Amaterasu heard what he had done, she was horrified. She declared she could never look upon him again. And from that moment, the sun and moon were divided, never sharing the sky. Their separation explained the cycle of day and night, the eternal distance between brother and sister, warmth and coldness, radiance and shadow. The myth is stark, almost brutal. In Greece, a Selene story shimmered with romance. In Egypt, Khonsu's with healing. But Tsukuyomi's tale is one of judgment, of uncompromising truth. He represents a morality that does not bend for sentiment. In his refusal to accept what he saw as corruption, he severed harmony itself. The night became a place not of comfort, but of consequence. To the Japanese, this duality between Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi embodied balance. Day and night, warmth and cold, compassion and severity. Where the sun blessed, the moon judged. Where the sun nourished, the moon disciplined. Humanity needs both. Without Amaterasu, there is no growth. Without Tsukuyomi, no order. Tsukuyomi's role was not widely celebrated with temples and festivals the way Amaterasu's was. His presence was quieter, more atmospheric, bound to the rhythm of night itself. Farmers looked to him for calendars. Priests invoked him in rituals that required purity and discipline. He was not prayed to for love or healing. He was respected, even feared, as the witness who could not be deceived. His masculine presence also set him apart. In much of the world, the moon was imagined as female, Selene, Chandra, countless motherly forms. But in Japan, Tsukuyomi was male. The night was not a nurturing embrace, but a cold, watchful eye. His silver light did not soothe, but revealed. He reminded mortals that even in darkness, there is no escape from judgment. This severity made him less beloved than other deities, but perhaps more profound. He embodied the uncomfortable truth that not all divine forces exist to comfort us. Some exist to discipline us, to restrain excess, to remind us that beauty has limits. The Japanese did not need Tsukuyomi to be loved. They needed him to exist, to counterbalance Amaterasu's brilliance. And yet, even in this harshness, there is mystery. Tsukuyomi vanishes from many later myths, overshadowed by Amaterasu and Susanoo. He is remembered in fragments, invoked in poetry, glimpsed in ritual, but not fleshed out with endless stories. This silence is telling. The Japanese seem to sense that the moon's coldness is best left unembellished. Too much myth would warm him, make him relatable. Better to keep him distant, inscrutable, as the moon itself often seems. When we place him beside Khonsu, the difference is striking. Khonsu was the moon as companion, protector, healer. Tsukuyomi is the moon as distance, judgment, unyielding law. Where Khonsu traveled to aid the sick, Tsukuyomi stayed aloof, dividing day from night. And yet both reveal the same truth. The moon is not merely romantic, it can be stern. It can demand as much as it gives. Tsukuyomi's echo still lingers in Japanese culture today. In poetry, he is the quiet watcher of the night. In anime and manga, his name reappears as a symbol of immense, often fearsome power. His association with discipline and clarity makes him a favorite reference for storytellers. Even modern Japanese festivals, though centered more on Amaterasu's light, carry his shadow in the acknowledgement of balance. The West often imagines the moon as lover, muse, dreamer. Japan reminds us it can also be judge, divider, exile. The moon does not only comfort, it commands. Tsukuyomi still rides the night sky, pale and silent, forever apart from his sister. Their separation is eternal, their balance unbroken. And every night, when the sun falls and the moon rises, we live again the consequence of his choice. Tsukuyomi's silence after his violent act became his essence. He did not rage like Susanoo. He did not plead like lesser gods. He withdrew into the night, leaving Amaterasu in the day. The Japanese storytellers did not embroider him with endless deeds. They allowed him to remain remote, as if to say, judgment does not explain itself. It stands apart. This absence has meaning. Myths are not only about what is said, but about what is withheld. In Tsukuyomi's scarcity of stories, we feel the weight of his character. He is not meant to charm us with tales or soften us with miracles. He is meant to be the cold division between light and dark. His power lies not in multiplicity, but in the single act that defined eternity, the killing of Ukemochi and the sundering of sun and moon. The symbolism of that act runs deep. Ukemochi's food, drawn from her body, was primal abundance. It was the earth offering itself without disguise. Tsukuyomi's rejection was a rejection of the raw, the unfiltered. He demanded purity, order, refinement. He killed not out of hunger, but out of principle. In this, he embodies the moon as ascetic. His light reveals but does not indulge, clarifies but does not nourish. He is the god who values form over impulse, clarity over excess. This sternness seeped into the way the Japanese understood the moon. Unlike in Greece, where moonlight was imagined as tender and romantic, or in Egypt, where it healed and protected, in Japan the moon was cooler, sharper. It was not always the companion of lovers. It was the still light that made shadows clear, that left no room to hide. To walk under Tsukuyomi's gaze was to feel observed, not embraced. His masculinity also marked a striking contrast with other traditions. The moon is so often cast as female, the mother, the muse, the maiden. But in Tsukuyomi, the Japanese saw a stern male figure, balanced against the radiant femininity of Amaterasu. Their division was not only cosmic, but gendered, day as nurturing mother, night as unyielding father. This inversion reshaped the archetype of the moon itself. It was not always gentle. It could be stern, even oppressive. Tsukuyomi's aloofness made him less popular than his siblings. Shrines for Amaterasu glowed with devotion. Susanoo inspired myths of storms and battles. Tsukuyomi remained the quiet, necessary counterpoint. He had few festivals, but he was not forgotten. His name endured in poetry, invoked by courtiers and monks who gazed at the moon and felt its austerity. The great Heian poets wrote of the cold brilliance of the night sky, the sense of clarity and melancholy that fell upon gardens and rooftops when the moon was full. They were speaking of Tsukuyomi, even when they did not call his name. This silence gave him endurance. Gods tied to too many tales can fade as their stories lose relevance. But Tsukuyomi, defined by distance, could never be outdated. He is not a god of narrative, but of atmosphere. As long as the moon divides day from night, he lives. Placed beside Chandra of India, the contrast is even sharper. Chandra pulses with rhythm, fertility, emotion, a god of life and passion. Tsukuyomi offers none of that. He is the god of refusal, of restraint. Where Chandra represents abundance, Tsukuyomi represents limit. Together they reveal the dual truth of the moon. It gives and it withholds, it nourishes and it denies. In modern Japan, Tsukuyomi's shadow remains surprisingly vivid. His name surfaces in manga and anime as a symbol of overwhelming power, often linked to illusion or judgment. Writers draw upon his myth to evoke the idea of unavoidable consequence, of truth that pierces even in darkness. Though temples may not echo with his hymns, popular culture resurrects him constantly, sensing in his austerity a drama that still resonates. And beyond Japan, his archetype still matters. In a world where the moon is often romanticized, Tsukuyomi stands as a reminder that it is not always kind. Sometimes it is merciless. Sometimes it divides rather than unites. Sometimes it judges rather than comforts. Look at the night sky, and you can still feel his presence. The moon hangs apart from the sun, forever exiled, forever dividing. Its light is beautiful, but it is also sharp. It does not warm, it reveals. It does not embrace, it watches. That is Tsukuyomi's gift and his curse. In the Japanese imagination, the gods were born from cleansing, from the washing away of impurity. Tsukuyomi carries that essence still. He is the cold water poured over the earth, stripping away illusion, leaving only what cannot be denied. He is the God who severed day from night so we would never confuse them again. And perhaps that is why, centuries later, when we watch the moon rise, we still feel a trace of unease. Its glow is beautiful, but it is also distant, unreachable. It does not ask for our love, it commands our respect. That is Tsukuyomi, silent, pale, uncompromising. The God who is always there, but never near. In the vast weave of Hindu mythology, where gods are born not from single acts, but from eternal cycles, the moon was never a simple ornament. It was a force, a rhythm, a being whose presence pulsed through cosmos and body alike. They called him Chandra. Chandra is often depicted as a handsome youth, shining, crowned with a crescent, riding across the heavens in a chariot drawn by white antelope or horses. Unlike the distant severity of Tsukuyomi, Chandra was intimate. His glow was not only for the sky, it entered the veins of earth itself. In the Vedic hymns, he is Soma, the intoxicating elixir of immortality, drunk by gods and mortals in ritual alike. Soma was drink and deity, substance and spirit, and in time it fused with Chandra, making the moon not just a presence, but a sacrament. The myths surrounding him are tangled, but always luminous. One of the most telling stories is his marriage. Chandra wed 27 daughters of Daksha, each one a star in the sky. Yet he favored one above all, Rohini. His devotion to her was so consuming that the other wives felt neglected. They complained to their father, who cursed Chandra with a wasting disease. His body began to fade, his light dimming. The gods, alarmed, pleaded for mercy, and the curse was softened. Chandra would wax and wane, losing light but always regaining it. Thus the phases of the moon were explained, and the cycle of decline and renewal became part of cosmic law. In this myth, Chandra embodies both passion and balance. His favoritism shows desire, his curse shows consequence, and his cycle shows redemption. Unlike Tsukuyomi's permanent exile, Chandra's punishment is transformation, a rhythm that still governs life today. In every waxing crescent, we see love's devotion. In every waning half, we see its cost. And in every return to fullness, we see forgiveness. Chandra's presence was everywhere in Indian life. The lunar calendar structured rituals, fasts, and festivals. Farmers sowed according to his light, just as lovers traced omens in his phases. The human body itself was said to echo him. In Ayurveda, the moon governed the mind, emotions, and fluids of the body. His coolness was contrasted with the heat of the sun. To meditate under his glow was to calm the heart, to find balance against fire. Even the great god Shiva bore Chandra as a jewel in his hair. In images of Shiva, the crescent moon rests against his matted locks, a symbol of time controlled, cycles mastered. This union raised Chandra from deity to principle, not only a god to be prayed to, but a truth to be worn by gods themselves. He was not only the moon, he was the measure of existence. Chandra was also tied to fertility and love. His cool light was believed to nourish plants, to quicken seeds, to inspire romance. Poets sang of moonlit nights as the stage of passion. Lovers invoked his name in their longing. Where Selene whispered of beauty and Tsukuyomi of severity, Chandra promised abundance. His light was not just reflection, it was nourishment. Yet he was not without flaws. Another tale tells of his arrogance. Chandra once mocked the god Ganesha, refusing to honor him. In retaliation, Ganesha cursed him, declaring that whoever gazed upon the moon on a certain night would fall into misfortune. To this day, some Hindus avoid looking at the moon during the festival of Ganesh Chaturthi, remembering the danger of pride even in so radiant a god. Chandra was luminous, but he could falter. His brilliance carried vanity, and his myths remind us that even beauty must bow to humility. Placed alongside Khonsu and Tsukuyomi, Chandra is strikingly different. Khonsu measured time and healed. Tsukuyomi divided light from dark, but Chandra breathed life into existence. He was not only the moon in the sky, but the pulse in the body, the rhythm in the mind, the cycle in the cosmos. His presence was not austere but intimate. He was the moon as passion, as renewal, as nourishment, and his influence endures. Even today, Hindu festivals follow his phases. Karva Chauth, a ritual where wives fast and pray for their husbands, ends with gazing at the moon, offering water to Chandra, asking for blessing. Countless poems, songs, and films in India still invoke him as the symbol of beauty and longing. The very word Chand in Hindi means both moon and beloved. In India, to call someone my moon is not metaphorical. It is to call them divine. Chandra is more than a relic of myth. He is living culture, present in the words, the rituals, the bodies of millions. His glow is not just remembered, it is practiced. He is perhaps the most lived of all moon gods, because his cycles are still obeyed, his phases still guide daily life. Chandra's story is not only written in myth, but in the fabric of philosophy. The Vedic seers spoke of him not as a distant celestial body, but as the very lord of the mind. The word manas, mind, was bound to his name. He was the subtle pull that governed thought, memory, imagination. His phases mirrored the way the human mind expands with possibility and contracts into silence. To meditate under Chandra's glow was to align one's inner tides with the cosmic rhythm outside. This intimacy made him inseparable from daily life. Every ritual calendar was lunar. Every festival was set by his face. Weddings, fasts, pilgrimages, all were timed by Chandra's rhythm. Time itself was measured not in abstract numbers, but in moons. The month was his gift, a unit born of his cycle. To live in India was to live by his breath. And yet Chandra was not simply benevolent. His myths remind us of his fragility, his susceptibility to passion. The story of Daksha's curse, his wasting disease softened into cyclical renewal, reflects not only the phases of the moon, but the frailty of desire. Chandra could not control his favoritism. He loved Rohini too much. His excess was punished, his brilliance dimmed. And so even gods are bound by balance. Love too heavily weighted becomes imbalance, and imbalance brings decline. His cycle is therefore a cosmic parable. Passion must be tempered. Devotion must be shared. Light must wax and wane. This lesson carried into ritual fasting. To deny oneself at the new moon was to mirror Chandra's emptiness, to embrace discipline. To celebrate at the full moon was to honor his abundance. In this rhythm, humans learned humility, patience, and endurance. They were reminded that all fullness is fleeting and all emptiness is temporary. Nothing is fixed. Life, like Chandra, is always moving. It is no coincidence that Shiva wears him. In the great images of the destroyer god, the crescent moon sits nestled in his tangled hair, glowing gently against the storm of cosmic energy. This is no decoration, it is a statement. Shiva, who embodies destruction and transformation, bears Chandra as a sign that time itself bends to his will. The waxing and waning of the moon is held in place by Shiva's presence. Here Chandra is not merely a god, He is a principle of existence, bound into the heart of the cosmic dance. Placed beside Selene, Chandra's difference is luminous. Selene was love unfulfilled, beauty eternal yet unreachable. Chandra was abundance and renewal, flawed but living. Selene's story speaks of yearning frozen in time, while Chandra speaks of love punished, redeemed, and cycled. Where Selene whispers of loneliness, Chandra pulses with fertility. The two together remind us that the moon is both lover and life-giver, both absence and overflow. Placed beside Tecciztecatl, the contrast deepens. Tecciztecatl is the moon as failure, defined by hesitation. Chandra is the moon as excess, defined by passion too intense. One shamed into compromise, the other cursed into rhythm. Both teach that weakness is not erased but woven into the cycles we live by. The moon does not hide our flaws. It reflects them, magnifies them, makes them eternal. And yet, unlike Tecciztecatl, Chandra's flaw becomes his gift. His curse becomes the measure of months. His decline becomes the promise of return. He is proof that imperfection can be sacred, that even imbalance can create beauty if balanced by time. This is perhaps why he remains so deeply loved. He is not perfect. He is human, even in his divinity. In modern India, Chandra is not confined to mythic texts. His presence saturates culture. Bollywood films call lovers "my moon." Poets still write of his cool light as the balm of longing. Families still fast and feast by his phases. Astronomers may speak of craters and orbits, but everyday life still speaks his name. He is not a relic. He is alive in language, in ritual, in imagination. Even beyond India, his influence has spread. The word chakra, the wheel of energy in the body, echoes his cycles. The very English word month, from munth, is his legacy. In every calendar, in every gaze that lingers at a crescent sky, Chandra is still with us. Perhaps this is his greatest gift. He bridges cosmic and personal. He is not only in the heavens, but in our minds, our blood, our time. He is the God who reminds us that life is not linear, but cyclical, not absolute, but flowing. He whispers that loss is not the end, that desire can be transformed, that even when light fades, it returns. Stand on an Indian plain during a full moon night, and you can feel him. The air cools, the earth gleams pale, shadows soften. Farmers still glance up, measuring their work by his glow. Lovers still sigh, comparing beauty to his face. Children still listen to stories of his curse, his cycle, his forgiveness. And above it all, Chandra rides, eternal and ever-changing. He is not silence like Tsukuyomi. He is not longing like Selene. He is not vigilance like Khonsu. He is not hesitation like Tecciztecatl. He is rhythm. He is renewal. He is the proof that life itself is a waxing and waning, that no darkness is permanent, no fullness eternal. His glow is the heartbeat of the cosmos, and so Chandra endures, not as a figure to be studied in old texts, but as a living God of time and love. His light still touches us, his rhythm still moves us, his flaw still teaches us. He is both God and mirror, both principle and presence. The moon rises in India, and it is not stone. It is Chandra, lover, jewel, mind, cycle. Always fading, always returning, always ours. The Aztecs believed the world had been created and destroyed many times. Each age was called a sun, and each ended in disaster. Floods, jaguars, fire, wind. By the time of the fifth sun, the gods faced a terrible question. Who would sacrifice themselves to rekindle the sky, to become the new light of the world? Two deities stepped forward. One was Nanahuatzin, humble, diseased, covered in sores. The other was Tecciztecatl, wealthy, adorned in precious feathers and jewels. He was brave in words, proud in bearing, but when the moment of sacrifice arrived, he faltered. The gods built a great fire. Whoever leapt into it would be consumed and reborn as the new sun. Nanahuatzin, though poor and weak, did not hesitate. He cast himself into the flames, and from the fire rose the blazing sun. Tecciztecatl was meant to follow, but fear gripped him. He circled the fire again and again, unable to leap. The gods jeered. The moment passed. Shamed, he finally hurled himself into the fire, but it was too late. The sky already had a sun. And so Tecciztecatl became the moon, not by triumph, but by compromise. This myth gave the Aztecs their explanation of why the moon's light is pale. It shines not with glory, but with borrowed fire, dim compared to the sun's brilliance. Tecciztecatl was the god who hesitated, whose flaw was immortalized. His light was a reminder not of perfection, but of imperfection. The story is startling in its honesty. Most civilizations dress their moon in beauty, romance, or judgment. The Aztecs clothed theirs in shame. Tecciztecatl is not adored like Selene, not respected like Khonsu, not feared like Tsukuyomi, not loved like Chandra. He is pitied, remembered as the god who could not leap when it mattered most. And yet, in this very flaw lies his power. For the Aztecs, sacrifice was the highest law. The sun itself required blood to rise each day. To fail at sacrifice was the deepest weakness. Tecciztecatl embodied this truth. His story warned warriors and rulers alike. Hesitation is dishonor. Better to leap and burn than to live in shame. Every battle, every ritual was infused with this lesson. The moon overhead was not comfort, but reminder. His symbols carried the same message. Tecciztecatl was often depicted with a shell, a reminder of his retreat, his hesitation, his hiding. In codices, his image is pale, sometimes marked with traces of humility forced upon pride. Where other moon gods carried crowns or weapons, he carried a stigma. His very body was narrative, and yet he endured in imagination. The Aztecs did not erase him. They needed his story as much as Nanahuatzin's. Together they embodied dual truth, bravery and cowardice, glory and shame, sun and moon. To live under the fifth sun was to live with both lights, the brilliance of courage and the pale echo of hesitation. Placed beside Selene, Tecciztecatl feels almost inverted. She was the goddess of love's eternal devotion. He the god of love's failure to act. Selene descended each night for Endymion, no matter the silence. Tecciztecatl delayed, faltered, leapt only when it was too late. If Selene is longing immortalized, Tecciztecatl is weakness immortalized, and both strangely endure. In modern imagination, Tecciztecatl appears less often than others, but his essence is alive. In Mexico, the moon is still linked to humility, to cautionary tales. In art, his shell becomes a symbol of vulnerability, of the weight of imperfection. And in literature, his myth is retold as a reminder that even gods stumble. The moon's pale glow, so often romanticized in the West, still whispers another truth in Mesoamerica. The light you see is the light of hesitation. But perhaps this is why he is necessary. Without Tecciztecatl, the pantheon of moon gods would be incomplete. The others teach beauty, protection, judgment, renewal. Tecciztecatl teaches failure. He teaches that divinity does not erase weakness, that even gods tremble before fire. His myth does not comfort, it confronts. It forces us to ask, what will you do when your fire comes? Will you leap, or will you circle the flames until it is too late? The Aztecs lived with sacrifice as their heartbeat. Every ritual, every war, every offering was tied to the belief that the sun needed blood to rise. Tecciztecatl's failure gave urgency to this belief. If the gods themselves could falter, then mortals had no excuse. To hesitate was to dishonor creation. To leap was to sustain it. And so the pale disk of Tecciztecatl became a nightly lesson, not in beauty but in demand. His glow was not silver romance, but silver reproach. Each night the moon rose, The Aztecs remembered that courage defines destiny, and hesitation leaves only shadows. Tecciztecatl hesitation is more than a single act in myth. It is a philosophy carved into the Aztec worldview. The Aztecs believed the cosmos itself was fragile, forever at risk of collapse, and only continual sacrifice could hold it together. Nanahuatsin's leap into the flames embodied this courage. Tecciztecatl's delay embodied the opposite, the weakness that could unravel worlds. In their contrast, the Aztecs found both inspiration and warning. This duality was not erased from ritual. During ceremonies, warriors were reminded that they must be like Nanahuatsin, never like Tecciztecatl. To hesitate in battle was to betray not only comrades but the gods. The moon overhead became a nightly sermon in the sky. Act now or be diminished. His pale light carried the memory of a god who faltered when action mattered most. His imagery reinforced this. In codices, Tecciztecatl appears with a large seashell, a symbol of retreat and concealment. The shell is beautiful, spiraled, but it hides, just as he hid from the fire. The shell became his emblem, and through it, his lesson. Wealth, jewels, appearance, none of it matters when courage is demanded. Without the leap, brilliance turns hollow. And yet his presence in the sky was unavoidable. The Aztecs could not deny him. Each night when the sun fell, his face rose, pale and watchful. He was not forgotten nor erased. He was endured. His flaw was immortalized, and his immortality ensured that flaw would be remembered forever. Unlike Nanahuatsin, whose glory blazes by day, Tecciztecatl lingers in the quieter, lonelier hours when human hearts are most uncertain. Placed beside Chandra, his contrast deepens. Chandra faltered through excess of love, favoring one wife too much. His flaw became cycle, renewal, abundance. Tecciztecatl faltered through fear, delaying the leap. His flaw became shame, pallor, compromise. Chandra's weakness gave us rhythm. Tecciztecatl's gave us reproach. One turns flaw into fertility, the other turns flaw into warning. Together they show the two paths weakness can take, transformation or disgrace. Placed beside Khonsu, Tecciztecatl appears fragile. Khonsu is the guardian, the healer, the regulator of time. Tecciztecatl is the coward, the hesitant, and yet even fragility has its place. Where Khonsu reassures, Tecciztecatl unsettles. Where Khonsu promises order, Tecciztecatl reminds us that order can falter. The Aztecs knew life was not only balance and healing, it was also risk, and the price of hesitation was high. In modern imagination, his myth has a strange resonance. In Mexico and beyond, storytellers retell his tale as a fable of courage. Writers paint him as the flawed mirror to the sun's heroism. His seashell still appears in art, symbol of retreat and vulnerability. And in popular culture, his story is retold not only as shame, but as humanity. For who has not hesitated at the edge of fire? Who has not circled the flames, uncertain, afraid? Tecciztecatl forces us to see ourselves not in triumph, but in weakness. Perhaps that is his enduring gift. Most gods embody ideals: beauty, power, order, fertility. Tecciztecatl embodies imperfection. He reminds us that even the divine can fail, and in that failure, we see our own reflection. We may scorn him, but secretly, we recognize him. The moon's pale glow is our hesitation written across the sky. The Aztecs needed him because they needed warning. We may need him because we need honesty. The sun inspires us, but the moon humbles us. Together they keep us whole. Stand on the ruins of Teotihuacan on a full moon night, and the stones glow silver. The pyramid of the moon looms against the sky. Tourists stand silent, their faces lit with a light older than any empire. The sun may have set, but the pale disk remains. It is Tecciztecatl, the god who faltered, still watching. His glow is not glory, but it is truth. He whispers across centuries, courage defines destiny. Hesitation leaves only shadows. And so, Tecciztecatl completes the circle of moon deities. Selene, the goddess of longing, Khonsu, the healer of night, Tsukuyomi, the judge of darkness, Chandra, the rhythm of life, Tecciztecatl, the flaw immortalized. 5 faces of the same eternal moon, 5 mirrors of humanity, 5 lessons written in silver across the night sky, 5 gods, 5 civilizations, 5 mirrors of the same pale disk. What do they reveal when placed side by side? Selene, the eternal lover, shines with beauty and longing. Khonsu, the traveler, heals and guards the night. Tsukuyomi, the austere, divides and judges. Chandra, the radiant, pulses with life and renewal. Tecciztecatl, the hesitant, falters and teaches by flaw. Each wears the moon like a mask, yet each unveils something of humanity. Their contrasts are striking. Selene embodies tenderness, Chandra fertility, while Tsukuyomi embodies severity and Khonsu order. Tecciztecatl embodies imperfection itself. One comforts, one nourishes, one disciplines, one protects, one warns. Together they sketch a map of the human condition, from passion to hesitation, from abundance to austerity. And yet, despite differences, threads bind them. All 5 carry the cycle of time: Selene's nightly chariot, Khonsu's steady journey, Tsukuyomi's division of day and night, Chandra's waxing and waning, Tecciztecatl's dim reflection. All remind us that the moon is a clock. Its phases mark calendars, its face divides hours, its rhythm orders life. The gods change, but their message is the same. Time is not endless chaos. It is patterned, and the moon is its keeper. They also share the theme of distance. Selene loves Endymion, but can never wake him. Khonsu heals but does not embrace. Tsukuyomi exiles himself from his sister. Chandra shines but is cursed to fade. Tecciztecatl leaps too late, forever marked by failure. None of them are close, none entirely ours. The moon is never fully possessed. It remains just beyond reach. The gods remind us that beauty, order, judgment, renewal, and weakness are glimpsed but never mastered. Their gendered forms reveal cultural imagination. In Greece and India, the moon could be female, the lover, the mother, the muse. In Japan, it was male, austere, distant, unyielding. In Egypt, Khonsu's masculinity carried youth and protection. In Mesoamerica, Tecciztecatl embodied cowardice, a rare portrayal of divine imperfection. Each choice reflects how cultures projected their ideals and fears onto the sky. The moon was a canvas for identity as much as divinity. Placed in conversation, their lessons sharpen. Selene and Tecciztecatl embody opposite responses to love: one who leaps endlessly toward a sleeping beloved, one who hesitates fatally before fire. Khonsu and Chandra contrast order and passion. One keeps rhythm, the other lives it. Tsukuyomi stands apart, the god who accepts no compromise, whose severity divides even family. Together they remind us that divinity is not singular. It is multifaceted, contradictory, unresolved. And yet the moon unites them. The same light that kissed Endymion's face in Greece, guarded travelers in Egypt, judged impurity in Japan, nourished crops in India, and shamed hesitation in Mexico. Different lands, different tongues, but the same silver orb. It is as if humanity, scattered across continents, was holding one great dialogue through the moon, each culture adding its voice to a chorus. Perhaps this is why the moon still fascinates us. It is the only celestial body we all see the same way, no matter where we stand. The sun blinds us with distance. The stars scatter in patterns that shift with latitude. But the moon is immediate, universal. Every civilization, from Stone Age hunters to modern city dwellers, has looked up at it and felt something stir. That stirring gave rise to Selene, Khonsu, Tsukuyomi, Chandra, Tecciztecatl. That stirring continues in us. And when we compare them, we see more than myth. We see archetypes of ourselves. Selene is our longing, Khonsu our vigilance, Tsukuyomi our judgment, Chandra our renewal, Tecciztecatl our hesitation. The moon has always been a mirror, and the gods are the reflections we place there. To synthesize them is to recognize that no single face is complete. If we looked only at Selene, we would think the moon is only love. If only at Khonsu, only law. If only at Tsukuyomi, only severity. If only at Chandra, only abundance. If only at Tecciztecatl, only weakness. But together they reveal the full truth. The moon is all of these at once. Love and law, judgment and passion, courage and failure. Humanity itself written in silver light. Their intersections also show us the universality of myth. The Greeks, Egyptians, Japanese, Indians, Aztecs never spoke to one another, yet they told stories that rhyme. They all felt the same pull, the same fascination, the same need to clothe the moon in meaning. It is not coincidence, it is testament. The moon was too powerful to ignore. It demanded story, and humanity answered in many voices. And so, across continents, across centuries, across forgotten empires, the moon remains the one companion every human shares. Its gods may differ, but its presence is constant. In comparing them, we do not reduce them. We amplify them. We hear the harmony of difference. We feel the unity of diversity. We recognize that the moon is not owned by one culture, but by all. The moon is not only above us, it is between us. From the first gaze of ancient shepherds to the telescopes of astronauts, the question has never changed. What do we see when we look at the moon? A rock? A clock? Or the faces of gods? Selene taught us longing, the beauty of desire even when it cannot wake its beloved. Khonsu taught us order, the rhythm that reassures us even in the dark. Tsukuyomi taught us judgment, the cold light that divides and refuses compromise. Chandra taught us renewal, the cycle of passion and forgiveness. Tecciztecatl taught us weakness, the flaw that lingers as warning. Together they tell us the moon is not one thing but many, a mirror reflecting all that we are. And what does that mirror reveal? That we are creatures of contradiction. We yearn and we hesitate. We heal and we destroy. We judge and we forgive. The moon has been our silent teacher because it carries these contradictions in its phases. It is never fixed, always changing, yet always returning. It reminds us that we too are cycles. We wax, we wane, we rise again. In Selene's devotion, we see the endurance of love. In Khonsu's vigilance, we see the necessity of order. In Tsukuyomi's exile, we see the price of severity. In Chandra's curse, we see the gift of renewal. In Tecciztecatl's hesitation, we see the cost of fear. These are not distant lessons. They are human lessons, written across the sky in silver ink. And so, when we look at the moon tonight, what will we see? Will we see Selene's chariot, Khonsu's protection, Tsukuyomi's judgment, Chandra's glow, Tecciztecatl's shame? Or will we see ourselves, fragile, luminous, ever-changing? The truth is that the moon does not choose. It simply reflects. It gives us back the stories we need in the moments we need them. Lovers see Selene. Wanderers see Khonsu. The stern see Tsukuyomi. The hopeful see Chandra. The regretful see Tecciztecatl. The moon is one, but its meanings are endless. And perhaps that is why it still holds us, even in an age of satellites and science. We have walked upon its dust, measured its craters, mapped its orbit, yet still, when it rises, we fall silent. Still, we feel that old stirring, the need to tell a story, the need to whisper a prayer. Still, we sense that it is more than stone. Still, we feel it watching. The gods may fade, but the questions remain. What is courage? What is love? What is order? What is weakness? What endures? The moon has been asking us these questions since the beginning. and it will go on asking long after we are gone. So let this not be the end, but an invitation. Look up tonight. See the moon not only as light, but as a mirror. See Selene's tenderness, Khonsu's guardianship, Tsukuyomi's severity, Chandra's renewal, Tecciztecatl's hesitation. See the gods in its glow, and through them, see yourself. And if these stories moved you, share them. Let others hear of the gods who still walk the night. Subscribe, join the journey, and follow as we trace the light and shadows of gods across the heavens. Because the moon does not belong to one people, one age, or one myth. It belongs to us all, and tomorrow we will follow its silver path further, into new tales, new heavens, new reflections. The journey has only begun.